There are failures of justice that are accidents. Wrong place, wrong time. Evidence misread. Witnesses mistaken. And then there are failures of justice that are something else entirely. Something that keeps you awake long after you've finished reading the file. My name is Patricia. I am a former public defender. In 2022, I was asked to review a wrongful conviction case out of a small county in rural Georgia. The case belonged to a woman named Miriam Cross. Miriam had been convicted in 1996 of the murder of her husband, Thomas. She had maintained her innocence for 25 years. She was released in 2021 after DNA evidence, finally tested, finally admitted, exonerated her completely. She walked out of Lowndes County Correctional Facility on a Tuesday morning in March. 53 years old, gray-haired, quiet-eyed, having entered those doors at 28, and across the street, standing on the sidewalk, was her neighbor, Gerald Foss, who had lived next door to Miriam and Thomas since 1991, who had testified against Miriam at trial, who had, it would later be established, killed Thomas Cross himself, and who had spent 25 years waiting for Miriam to come home. Miriam Cross had married Thomas in the summer of 1993. She was 25. He was 31. By most accounts, it was not a happy marriage. Thomas drank. He was controlling. There were police call-outs to the property, 3 in 2 years, that resulted in no charges. The neighbors knew. Small street, thin walls, people knew. On the night of November 4th, 1995, Thomas Cross was found dead in the kitchen of their home on Sycamore Street. A single blow to the head. Miriam was found in the bedroom, distressed, no clear alibi. Traces of Thomas's blood on her clothing, which she said came from finding his body. The investigation lasted 11 days. 11 days. Miriam was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, and held without bail. The trial lasted 4 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. Life sentence. 28 years old. Gone. Gerald Foss had moved to Sycamore Street in 1991. Number 14. Miriam and Thomas at number 12. He was, by all accounts, an unremarkable neighbor. Quiet. Kept his lawn tidy. Waved from the driveway. Occasionally brought over food when one of the neighbors was unwell. He had testified at Miriam's trial. He told the jury he had heard arguing on the night of November 4th. He said he had heard Miriam's voice. Raised, he said, in anger. He said he had heard a sound he described as a heavy impact. Then, silence. The jury believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was the quiet neighbor. The tidy lawn, the occasional casserole. He had no reason to lie, or so everyone believed. What no one knew in 1996, what the 11-day investigation had never uncovered, was that Gerald Foss had a history, a different name in a different county, a restraining order filed in 1988 by a woman who said he had threatened her after she rejected him, a dismissed assault charge from 1990, records that existed, that were never pulled, that were never checked, because the case was closed in 11 days, because Miriam was already the answer they were looking for. Miriam Cross spent 25 years in prison. She filed for appeal 7 times. 7 times denied. She had no money for private counsel. She had no family with resources. She had no one on the outside fighting loudly enough to be heard. What she had was a prison legal aid volunteer named Susan Garrett, who took on her case in 2018. Susan was not a lawyer. She was a retired schoolteacher who spent her weekends reviewing wrongful conviction cases for a nonprofit organization. She read Miriam's file over a single weekend. On Monday morning, she called the Innocence Project. She said, "I need someone to look at this. I think the physical evidence was never properly tested. I think there is DNA at this crime scene that does not belong to Miriam Cross." The Innocence Project took 3 months to respond. Then they took the case. The DNA testing took 8 months. The results were unambiguous. Biological material found at the crime scene. Material that had been collected, catalogued, and then simply never tested. Belonged to Gerald Foss. Miriam was released on a Tuesday morning in March 2021. I was not there that day, but I have spoken to the attorney who walked out with her. She told me that Miriam stepped through the doors of Lowndes County Correctional Facility, stopped on the steps, and simply stood there, eyes closed, face turned toward the sky, for almost a full minute. Then she opened her eyes, and across the street, Gerald Foss was standing on the sidewalk. He lived 2 blocks from the facility. He had, neighbors would later confirm, walked past those doors every single day for 25 years. Miriam looked at him. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. The attorney said she did not understand, in that moment, who he was. She said Miriam's face, in the second she saw him, did something she could not describe. Not fear, not anger, recognition. The specific, terrible recognition of someone who has suspected a truth for 25 years, and is now, finally, looking it in the face. Gerald Foss was arrested 4 months after Miriam's release. The DNA evidence was unambiguous. His history, once properly searched, was damning. He was charged with the murder of Thomas Cross. He pleaded not guilty. He was convicted in February 2023. He is currently serving a life sentence. The same sentence Miriam served for 25 years, in the same state, in the same county. Miriam Cross received a compensation settlement from the state of Georgia. I will not say the amount. I will say that no amount, no number that can be written on a check, gives back 25 years. The house on Sycamore Street was sold long ago. Number 12, number 14. Both empty now, both quiet. I think about Miriam on those prison steps. Eyes closed, face toward the sky. 1 full minute of just being outside. After 25 years, I think about what it means to survive that, to maintain your innocence through 7 denied appeals, through 25 years of walls, through the particular cruelty of a system that had decided you were the answer and never looked further. I think about Susan Garrett, a retired schoolteacher with a weekend and a file, who saw what 11 investigators, 4 trial days, and 7 appeals had all failed to see, or had chosen not to. I think about Gerald Foss, standing on that sidewalk, every day for 25 years. I do not know what he was thinking. I do not want to know, but I think about what it means, to stand that close to your crime for that long, and feel safe enough to keep standing there. That is not the story of one man. That is the story of a system that made him feel that safe. And Miriam Cross, 53 years old, gray-haired, quiet-eyed, paid for it. For 25 years, she paid for it. If something in this stayed with you, leave it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you are carrying something you have never told anyone, you are in the right place. I'll see you in the next one.